Symantec issued HTTPS certificates are on Google's chopping block. The Senate votes to allow ISPs to sell web search data. Wikileaks says the CIA targets Apple devices, and John Deere tractors are being hacked. All that coming up now on ThreatWire. Hello everyone, I am Shannon Morse, and this is ThreatWire for March 28th, 2017, your summary of the threats to our security, privacy, and internet freedom. First off, a special thanks to our patrons for supporting the show each and every month. If you want access to extras, make sure to hit up patreon.com/threatwire for more information. So, moving on to our first story, extended validation certificates. Yeah, they sound kind of weird. They are certificates that are used on HTTPS websites that show the legal entity of the website in a little header in the address bar. Obtaining an extended validation certificate has to go through a certificate authority, and for example, if you are using Chrome, you would know that it's legit if there's a little green lock icon, it says secure or a company name, and it's labeled HTTPS instead of HTTP. Now, since January 19th, Symantec Corporation has been under investigation by the Google Chrome team for improperly validating at least 30,000 certificates over the course of several years. Yeah, not just 2016 or 2017. Years. This problem can allow attackers to impersonate legitimate websites, steal user credentials, and monitor communications from the legitimate servers. Due to the malpractice, Google Chrome doesn't have confidence in the security of these Symantec certificates, so they are proposing a few steps. First off, reducing the validity period for new Symantec certificates from 9 months to less. Second, slowly revalidating and replacing all currently trusted Symantec-issued certificates. And third, removing that extended validation status for the certificates for no less than 1 year. Basically, Chrome is putting Symantec in timeout and downgrading their trusted relationship. They are breaking up very, very slowly. Symantec issues a good 30% or more of the certificates on the web right now, so it's a pretty big chunk and a really big problem for Symantec. According to Symantec, though, the post by Google is misleading and exaggerated, and the actual number of misused certificates was only 127. That's a way big difference from 30,000. Both companies are in an ongoing discussion to continue their relationship, but also assess possible risk to web users. In our biggest story this week, the United States Senate voted to eliminate FCC privacy rules, and by doing so could allow ISPs to sell your browsing history to advertisers in the near future. The Senate voted 50, all Republican, to 48, all Democrat, headed by Republican Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, to eliminate rules created by the FCC which would block an ISP from selling web browsing history to advertisers without your consent or permission. Since the vote is now going to the U.S. House of Representatives, and it's expected to pass there as well, this means that Comcast, Verizon, Charter, any other ISP in the US could collect all sorts of information about you, including sites that you frequent, where you shop online, what dating sites you check, what banking sites you use, if you're in the market to buy a home, and more, and sell it off for profit. These regulations were originally passed by the FCC last year, explicitly ruling that the ISPs would need consumer consent to sell web browsing data, and they were to go into effect on March 2nd. Now, when the new chairman, Ajit Pai, was appointed, he stayed those privacy rules, which we had previously reported on. The Senate used something called a Congressional Review Act, or CRA for short, which not only voids the FCC rules, but it also removes their ability to make a rule just like that or very similar in the future, which means if it passes, we don't have any protections. Since more and more sites are switching to HTTPS, your traffic would still be encrypted, but the ISP would still know what domain you have visited, and they can most likely guess certain data about you based on the sites that you frequent. Private information such as sexual orientation, political views, where you bank, again, could all be shared without your consent. Along with this, the EFF put together a list of things ISPs could potentially do, such as hijacking and redirecting your search queries to sites that pay them a fee, inserting additional ads based on your traffic, pre-installing phone software that tracks your URL visits, and injecting traffic cookies into HTTP traffic. So with all this known, how do you keep your browsing history secure and private then? Well, since we have discussed the pros and cons of each on the previous episodes of ThreatWire, Hack5, and TechThing, which are my other two shows. I am not going to get into a debate here on the pros and cons of these, but basically consider learning more about how to use VPNs, how to choose one, downloading and using Tor instead of your current browser, and using HTTPS everywhere if you do use your current browser to help you browse in an encrypted protocol instead of just simply HTTP, which is unencrypted. And lastly, call your representatives. If enough people rally against the votes, we could end it when it gets to the House. On March 23, 2017, Wikileaks published a new set of documents pertaining to the CIA, of course, and Apple devices, dubbing the leak Dark Matter. According to the documents, the CIA's Embedded Development Branch, EDB for short, created malware that could infect Apple's Macs and iPhones firmware. Some tools they used include the sonic screwdriver, obvious Doctor Who reference, which would embed malicious code onto a Thunderbolt to Ethernet adapter and would work even if there is a firmware password and the device is just booting up. Dark Sea Skies is an EFI firmware malware that works on a MacBook Air, and another dubbed Triton is malware used on Mac OS X. All of these tools are from several years ago. Some are from 2008 all the way up to 2013. Now, according to Apple, the iPhone vulnerabilities were fixed back in 2009 and the Mac vulnerability in 2013. Sonic Screwdriver specifically was patched in 2015. But if you are still worried about the CIA hacking your iPhone or your Mac, make sure that it is updated to the current operating system, use very strong passwords or passcodes, and lock your devices, and never, ever, even if you're at Starbucks and you need to go to the bathroom or something, leave your device in a place where somebody could gain access to it. That's the most important part. Lastly for today is a quick headline from Patreon DcyMatrix over on patreon.com/ThreatWire. According to an article on Motherboard, farmers have been using European cracked firmware that's traded on invite-only forums to hack their John Deere tractors due to manufacturing rules that do not allow for unauthorized repairs. Farmers fear that tractors would break down and threaten their livelihood because they kind of need them to work, so in many cases it's faster to fix a problem themselves, especially when it requires a firmware update or change. Instead, they would have to wait for somebody to come and fix it for them, which could take a very long time. Due to a licensing agreement between John Deere and farmers, only licensed and authorized repair shops or technicians can update or change firmware, and since they charge hundreds of dollars for the service, technicians are using black market firmware instead. Since the Librarian of Congress approved exemptions to the DMCA for land vehicles, including tractors like John Deere in 2015, this is not necessarily illegal. But since farmers have to sign a licensing agreement with the company, John Deere could sue for violations, but it wouldn't be a federal crime. Right to Repair advocates want John Deere to open up software for any technicians, obviously, but John Deere stands by their contract, saying that software modifications are an increased risk to equipment as well as users. Before I go, I want to say huge thank you to everyone who has supported the show so far on Patreon. If you find value from this, you want to spare a few cents an episode, 25 cents per episode, that's about $1 per month, please consider becoming a patron over at patreon.com/ThreatWire. The reason we are able to do this show is because people like you contribute and keep it going. This show is completely independent and ad-free, and hey, if you contribute, we may even feature your adorable fur babies like these ones in our next episode. I love the new one. Thank you for sending that in, Sunny. Plus, you will get access to behind-the-scenes videos, an audio-only feed, and tons of extra content. If you can't donate, a like, a share, subscribe, all that stuff goes a long way too. Definitely subscribe if you haven't yet over on youtube.com/hack5. That's where you can find all of our shows and all of the episodes. And you can find all of our stuff over at threatwire.net as well and find out how to contribute. With that, I'm Shannon Morse. I will see you on the internet.